Right, premium pricing number 1. I love this picture. We are on page 33. There is always someone willing to do it cheaper, and that's what you get. Remember the, it was Alas Smith and Jones sketch when he's drawing, Christopher Rhys Jones is tattooing him on the back. You know what a pollock is, don't you? It's a bird. And the other thing, I can't remember his name now, he's dead now. Mel Smith. He's leaning forward like that, he's going, yeah, I've always wanted a pair of pollocks drawn on my back. And Christopher Rhys Jones just stops and looks, and it's absolutely classic, it's brilliant. Then you've got Rowan Atkinson, I am a mime and my body is my tool. Anyway, there's always someone willing to do it cheaper. This is really important because I know it's a funny picture and everyone gets it, but it's like a lot of stuff. People get it on the surface, but they don't really grok it and don't understand how important it is for their businesses. So we'll start in the same vein. Principle number 1. Almost no one is a pathological price buyer. There's probably 2 of them in the whole world, 3 in the whole world. Well, only 2 because now my dad's dead. My dad was a price buyer. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Maybe it was his generation. Maybe it was just he was a miserable old bastard. But he was a price buyer. When he died, I probably spent an afternoon grieving in the pub. And then I was fine. But my brother and I were reconciled after many years. And we were just reminiscing, and we were kind of driving around with his fucking ashes and sticks, looking for somewhere to dump them all, because I had my mum's as well. And we were cleaning out his house. I had the great pleasure of watching my brother vomiting off the front garden, because we went in my dad's fridge to clean it out, and everything had gone mouldy. I mean, we were talking of liquefied onions. And I've got a cast iron stove, don't bother me. But anyway, my dad was so fucking tight, right? Seriously, I'm not making any of this up, these are all true. He was so tight, he had a lump of cheese in his fridge. This is just before he died. And it was so old and crusty, he was cutting it with a tenon saw because he wouldn't spend the money to get new cheese. I mean, and the thing is, it wasn't like he was poor, because he left me and my brother a fairly substantial amount of money each, and the house too. But he lived like a pauper. And when we were kids, rather than, we were driving home once from a family holiday, or a day out at the seaside. And we got to this car park with a toilet in it, because the kids needed a piss, and Dad did too. But to go in there, you had to pay to park. It was like, 5p or something, so I'm going back 40 years or so. Rather than pay the money, my dad just abandoned the car in the entrance to the car park. So there's a fuck off great big queue of traffic, marched us all to the toilets, marched us all back, did a U-turn and drove out. It was so mean, unbelievable. And he was loaded. I used to go around to see him, and he'd be sitting there in the middle of winter, in the house, with fire off, in his hat and his coat. And I said, Dad, why are you sitting there like, oh, because the gas is expensive. You can afford it. Well, you never know, do you? Always the rainy day coming along. For fuck's sake, not at your age, there ain't. No, many more, And I bought him one of these thermometers, because it says, look, you're an old man now, Dad, and you can't regulate your temperature anymore, and you won't feel cold. And you'll just slip away and die and leave me all that money. You don't need this temperature gauge. But anyway, he was so mean. But anyway, the point is, there's very few pathological price buyers out there. I mean, even, I'm probably the other way. I'm probably a pathological non-price buyer, because I'm the kind of sucker who buys the most expensive thing of everything, just because I can. And because I can't be bothered wasting my time trying to decide, do I need this extra bit of widget? I just pay the money and fuck it. Sarah, my wife, her history is, when she was married before, they had money problems. So it's taken her a fair few years to kind of take on my attitude. Because we have this joke where I say, I earn the money, she spends it, which is actually pretty much true, because she's the home builder, she buys all the furniture and all this stuff like that. I'm not bothered about it. And she now is no longer a price buyer, but she's very careful. She will spend the time and make the effort to get the best deal. I just don't, never have done. But all of us, even those of us who are money conscious, say, are not money conscious about everything. Yeah? So even my dad, I suppose, he wouldn't care how much he spent on books, a bit like me. He'd be quite happy to spend money on books. That was his thing. And not understanding this is what makes people get into all sorts of probably low prices. We'll talk about what happens with low prices in a moment. But in a survey, again, this is a number quoted by Dan Kennedy several years ago, 84% of people said price was not the main criterion in making the buying decision. I'm surprised it's actually that low, to be honest. And it depends what they were buying, I suppose. But 84% of people. And if everyone bought on price all the time, there would only think about this, right? There'd only be one version of anything, the cheapest. Now, looking around this room, with the exception of, say, Dominic, no one's wearing the cheapest clothes they could find. No, seriously. Seriously. Nobody in this room is wearing the cheapest clothes they could find, unless they were the clothes they wanted, and they just happened to be the cheapest. Nobody here drives a Trabant, which are quite expensive, actually, these days. Yeah? Nobody drives a cheap, or a Yugo. You know, they just don't. Nobody here, I mean, Tim wears glasses, so does Chris, and so do I, and Drew. I bet they're not the cheapest than Ed, not the cheapest than Alex. Yeah, I mean, these are John Lennon glasses. I dug him up especially. And that was cheap. And, you know, the frames were actually quite reasonable. They were about $138, but I had to pay VAT on them. The lenses were €600. No, they're not the cheapest lenses I could get, but they're what I wanted. Okay? Now, you can get a pair of glasses from Specsavers for probably under €100, and they'll be perfectly serviceable, but why don't we buy them? Well, because they don't, it's not that they don't even suit our needs, it's just that we don't want them because we want something better. I mean, these lenses are very high index, so they're thin. They've got anti-scratch coating, they've got anti-glare, they sort out my astigmatism, and they're varifocals. They're fucking amazing, you know? Takes some getting used to. When you used to change the glasses, but once you're used to them, it's just automatic. But I pay the premium because it's what I want. I'm not exaggerating when I say getting varifocals, high quality lenses like this, changed my life. I was forever fucking changing glasses and squinting. Well, now these just stick to my head. So none of us buy the cheapest thing of everything. Go walking down any street and you'll see, you don't see the cheapest cars. We don't all live in the cheapest areas. We don't all wear the cheapest clothes, apart from Dom. We don't eat the cheapest food. I mean, who in the restaurant looks at the price first before deciding what to eat? Here. My dad did. Bless him. Dad wouldn't eat out because it was so expensive. Cost you no. Bloody cost you that does. Yes, Father, we know. But we just don't, do we? Now, okay, you could argue that in this room we are slightly unusual. Some, like me, are more unusual than most. But we're perhaps not representative of society in that, certainly in our political leanings. But in our terms of being non-price buyers, we are absolutely representative. We really are. I mean, you look at people who've got hobbies like golf, train sets, whatever. They'll pay any amount of money to scratch that itch. What are you looking at? What are you laughing at?
Train sets.
Some grown men spend thousands of pounds on train sets.
Do you think of them as like football season tickets?
Yes.
You know, they can't feed their family, but somehow they can go and pay thousands of pounds.
Or they can't feed their family, but they're down the pub every Saturday night and they smoke. I mean, smoking, how much is a packet of cigarettes these days? Anyone smoke here? No. How much is a packet of cigarettes? Like 5 or 6 quid? Fucking hell. My daughter, she smokes, rolls her own, but she smokes, but she can't afford a new charger for her phone. Well, yes, she can, she just chooses not to. So I said to her, well, you can't borrow mine. Mine. I've got 2, I'm going to cut one in half. So if everyone bought on price all the time, there'd only be one version of anything. We'll pay whatever we're asked to pay for the things we desperately want. Now, we've got a nice car, a Land Rover, but that's as much of a practical thing as anything else. But hitherto, we had, until some complete idiot crashed it, we had a Ford Focus. It wasn't even my car, it's Sarah's car. We'd had it for 10 or 11 years. I'm not interested in cars, so I'm not that bothered. You won't find me spending vast amounts of money on cars every 3 years. However, bicycles you could sell me a bike for a few £1,000, and then next week you sell me another one, because I love bikes. And stuff in my gym, I don't care what I pay for my gym. I spend a lot of money on clothes as well. Can't you tell? What? Well, no, there's a story behind that. I'll come to in good time. But the fact is, people will buy what they want, and they will find the money. You walk down Leicester's a good example. It's a fucking shithole, and it's full of fucking council estates. Now, I got nothing wrong with people who live on. There's nothing wrong with people who live on council estates. I lived on myself for a while, but for the most part, they're chavs, peasants, and commoners. They're fucking horrible, and they all complain about having no money. But they've all got new cars and satellite TVs and brand new fucking phones when you walk down the street, and branded trainers and stuff. Well, they've got the money to spend on the things they want to impress their equally chavvy friends. So what we're always buying on, it's not the price, it's the value. And of course, value is very subjective. You'll never ever sell me a set of golf clubs for any amount of money. I don't care how good quality they are. I'm just not interested in golf. I mean, I can't imagine anything more boring than walking around a field, hitting a ball with a bit of metal, trying to get it in a hole. I mean, for fuck's sake. Why would anybody do that? And especially when you consider the kind of people who play golf. I mean, just people anyway, to be honest. I wish there was a competitive sport I could play on my own. Hey? Wanking. Hardly a sport, is it? Well, as opposed to be honest, actually there is. It's like weight training, because you're competing against your last session, and you've just beaten your leg press record, haven't you? Yeah. You have to squeeze your butthole really tight to stop yourself prolapsing, don't you? So my friend tells me. Was it Regard whose shorts ripped in the gym when he went down to squat? I bet that sounded great. There's a video somebody sent to me the other day. It's the compilation of bicep tears. People in the gym, their bicep literally tears. And you see it come off the elbow, and it comes up here. Oh, it looks fucking painful. And there was one, it was squat accidents. And you get this guy, he goes into a steep squat, goes to come up, and you hear this enormous tearing sound. It's his fucking quads coming off the knee. Can you imagine that? He didn't warm up, I don't think. Anyway, so what we're always buying on is value, not price. And value is subjective, absolutely subjective. Even to the point that what's valuable, well, what's not valuable now, like to me, a dentist, I have no interest in going to the dentist, but when this tooth broke, I wanted a dentist really fucking quickly. That was valuable to me. So, we always buy on value, not price. And if someone is querying your price, it's actually a good thing. When most of us get query on our prices, we put them down because we think people are asking for a discount. That's sometimes what they're asking, but not always. Because sometimes they're querying the price because you've not shown them sufficient value. Yes, would you like to come up here and carry on? Share your joke with the rest of the class?
I'm asking Dom if he's paying attention to this particular piece of information.
Yes, you should be. You should be. Because when someone queries your price, it doesn't mean they don't want it. It just means they're questioning your value proposition. It's actually an invitation for you to sell harder. Think about that. Because what they're saying is, I want what you've got, but I'm not quite sure it's worth the money you're asking. Please tell me more. That's effectively what they're saying. Because if they didn't want to buy it, they'd just walk off. And we've all done that, I'm sure. It's like people handing out these leaflets in town and you just, no, I'm not interested. Now, there's an absolute negation, you don't want it. If people didn't want the stuff you're selling, they just wouldn't be there. Okay, so don't be afraid of price queries and objections that we'll come to later. Fundamentally, though, people want three things. They want top quality, exceptional service, and you think they want they want a low price. We all like a good deal, let's face it. It's, when we bought the Land Rover, it's not fucking funny, really. We sat there, and the guy, we said, yeah, we'll buy it. This is the price, we'll buy it. And all of a sudden, he jumps up and says, I'll see what I can do about the price, knock a bit more off. I looked at Sarah, she looked at me, all right. He came back and said, because we hadn't got a car to trade in, well, we had, but it was wrapped around a rock. He says, well, because you haven't got a trade in, I'm going to knock €1,700 off it. All right, fine. I don't mind, but I didn't ask for it. We were quite happy. My accountant, about 3 or 4 years ago, he sent me I had a VAT query, so there's a lot of stuff going on then. And he sent the bill, and this was actually hours spent, so it was a fair bill. It was bigger than anything he'd sent before, so he says, I've knocked €700 off the bill. Yeah. Okay, fine. At the same time, the guys here on the Elite One said, can you get us a room so we can stay an extra day and do some work? So I said to Sam on the desk, you know, Sam, the girl who came in it, I said, can we have just a meeting room so the guys can work? She says, yeah, they're normally €150, but we'll do it for 75. Okay, fine. So yeah, I appreciate a good deal. I will take a discount if you offer me one, but I don't want one. I don't care. She asked me if I wanted a discount. I just laughed at you.
Said you wouldn't have a discount.
Yeah, but you kind of intimated that I won't ask for one. And I said, I wouldn't demean myself. Here's something else. I said earlier about your inner game. Something else I've done a long time ago, and I don't know how I did it. I don't remember doing it consciously, but I suppose I must have done at some point. And this is really important too, is I have no emotional attachment to money. Yeah, if I lose £10, £10 falls out your wallet. My dad actually probably killed my father. You know, he would dwell on it for days. He would worry about it. I just don't care. I said to Sarah, it's not really as relevant now because things have changed. But I remember even when we didn't have too much money, I said to Sarah, if it's less than 50 quid, I don't even want to hear about it. Just going to, because I was sick and tired of, can we buy this, can we have that? It's like 15 quid. I don't want to hear about it. Just do it. And like with the company account, I said, if we get below a certain threshold, I want to know in the bank account, otherwise I don't care. Which is a fairly lackadaisical way of doing things. But my point is I have no emotional attachment to money, which can work both ways, of course. You know, it can make you lackadaisical. But it also saves you a lot of hassle, because if people owe me money and don't pay it, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. There's a guy in the States who owes me $4,000. And I had this conversation with a girl ages ago, and she says, if that happened to me, I'd be awake at night, worrying about it, chasing him. There's no fucking point. The time you spend chasing that bill can be much better spent making more. So I have no emotional attachment to money, which is a good thing. But anyway, people want top quality, exceptional service and a low price if they can get it. But the thing is, they can't have all three. And you will find, except for my dad and those two other people who are living somewhere, almost no one will say, yeah, I want shit service, I want crap quality, but give me a low price. Some probably will, but most won't. And I've done it before when I was much younger. I've bought cheap and regretted it. You know, you get the stereo home and it's shit. Buy cheap clothes and they fall apart. Dom. I don't know why I'm picking on you. Because you're an easy target. You're sitting there glowing at me, you know. Off dog's back. So what we're buying on is always value, and the price. If the three things that we can value, low price, quality, service, the price is actually the one that's the most irrelevant. And if by mischance you get someone who comes along and price isn't important to low price, just get rid of them, because they are not worth having in your life. Like I said the other day, if you've got a dog and you speak to it and it doesn't reply in its own special voice, unfriend me, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. Anyone who has a dog will understand that. All right, Haggis, yes. I have entire conversations with my dog. But we all do. What if I'm not a good boy? How will I know if I'm a good boy? I keep bringing this ball back to you and you throw it away again. Why? I only bring it back because you like throwing it. And it goes on for hours. Who's got a dog? You have. You do that same thing, don't you? Do you speak to your dog? Does it speak back? Yeah, exactly. All these non-dog owners are looking at me as if I'm a fucking nutter, but it's true. Even the cats do it. Yeah, the cats speak back. Our ginger cat, because I took the grey one to be put down because it was old and decrepit and it was falling to bits. And the ginger one, we've got this conversation going on. Look, I don't need to go to the vet. Look at me, I can jump still. Whee! Look how vital I am. Please don't take me to the vet, Dad. It's true, absolutely true. Even the bats have voices. Oh, look at me, I can walk around that tree. Whee! Anyway. Same voice. They're all mammals. Anyway, there's always someone willing to do it cheaper. And no one is a price buyer. This will become more apparent. But no one is a price buyer. No one here is a price buyer. If you were, you wouldn't be paying for a lead. Well, she's not. But. So, never mind the fact that no one's a price buyer. If they were, and we sold at low prices, does it matter? Yes, it does. Because cutting your prices is there's a book, I know Numpty's got it because I told her to get it, by a guy called Larry Steinmetz. He's a 6-foot-something tall Texan.
Larry what?
Steinmetz, S-T-E-I-N-M-E-T-Z, or Z. S-T-E-I-N-M-E-T fucking Z. Larry, as in Larry the Lamb.
You can only buy second-hand ones.
I think it's hardback as well, but it's called How to Sell at Higher Prices or something. I can't remember exactly. It's quite a long title, but it's about premium price selling. And he goes, I mean, the mathematical examples I use are very simple. He gets a much more complex one, which goes into things like cost of sale and stuff. I just go on margin, but it's just to illustrate it. It's a really good book. That book changed, that and the 80-20 principle changed my life, and Atlas Shrugged. Who's not read Atlas Shrugged? You should read Atlas Shrugged. You really should. Anyway, he talks in there about low price selling and how dangerous it is. And that forms the basis of a lot of my thinking, not all of it, a lot of my thinking. Certainly on the mathematical, the numbers side of things. But what's wrong with low prices? Well, the first thing is you get, and this has nothing to do with numbers, you get a low-class client. Yeah, it's hard to do, but whenever you get people coming to you with a really price-conscious mindset, with rare exception, you just want to run away from them, because they're hard to please. You get mission creep because they want more and more and more. They squeeze you for it. Okay, if you give a discount just to get the work, they expect a discount all the time. They are slow to pay, if they pay at all. You're working hard for a small reward often too. And they're not appreciative, and they're not loyal. Because if they are buying on price, as soon as someone comes along who's cheaper, they will switch to them. Like we said on the front, there's always someone willing to do it cheaper. And there is always someone willing to do it cheaper. When I was first starting off as a copywriter, I left, and my wife had left me for this other bloke that she's now divorced from. I'm sorry. I shouldn't gloat, should I? Hey? Oh, that happened a few years ago. No. Oh, it's a really, really funny story. You can record this as well. She's often asking me for money, child support, when I didn't have Rhoda with me. Now we've got one each, so it just cancels out. But child support, which is fine. And I've lent her money over the years that somehow never gets paid back. I don't care, because it just go away. It's easier to write the check. But here's the one thing that we used to do. Sarah would write the check, and Sarah would send it off. So she's asking me for money, but she's getting it from my new wife. It's just one of those subtle, sharp stiletto knives in the really painful part of your body, you know? Because she's got a very strong attachment to money, emotional. So that would really piss her off. Like I said, I shouldn't gloat, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Where was I going with that? Low prices, low class. You get low class clients who they're hard work, they're not appreciative, they're not loyal. As soon as someone else comes along. Oh, I remember what I was saying. As soon as she left, I quit my job down at Porton Down and I started freelance writing, copywriting. And the first gig I got of any consequence was with a firm called Aviva in Cambridge, and they got this amazing software that they used to make. Well, they bought a shipyard so they can make ships with it, but they can make anything, design anything from a ship to nuclear power stations. And every element in the design, pipes, nuts and bolts and washers, has got its own identity in the database. And this software is so cool. You can make all this stuff, and then you can print like a shopping list, and then it will talk automatically to the foundries and the things. So you can design these things, and everything appears when it's supposed to. It's fucking brilliant. But I had this job documenting their software, just the user manuals. And the incumbent firm didn't like it. And then they fucked up one day and they just cancelled the entire contract with this firm. And it was just me on my own. And then it was too big a job for me. There was so much work, I couldn't keep up. And then my business went in a different direction anyway. But during that small hiatus when it was just me, the guy who this firm that had been sacked deemed to be responsible for their failure, he was fired from this firm. And somehow he got hold of my name. And he blamed me for it all. So he actually phoned up the firm I was working with, and he said, I know that McCulloch bloke's doing all this work. Whatever he's charging you, I'll do it for half his price. There was someone willing to do it cheaper. And the guy said to me, the project manager says, we're not supposed to say this, it's not legal, but I don't want him working anywhere near, I don't want him anywhere near into this work. So if he contacts you asking to subcontract, I don't want him to. Fine. But that's how bad it is. This guy was willing to he didn't even know what I was charging, but he was willing to undercut me by half because he was desperate for the work. And the fact that this firm turned him away speaks volumes. They didn't want cheap, they wanted it doing right. There's always someone willing to do it cheaper. You work too hard for the reward, we talked about that. You can't give your clients the attention they deserve. This is one of the things, I've had this conversation with Michelle. She's got a competitor who's got a competing product or something that she's selling a lot of. But it's a guy on his own making them himself, I believe, isn't he? But it's a very small firm, and he's come in at a lower price thinking he'll get the volume. And I've told Michelle, keep an eye on it, yeah, but don't worry, because he'll just shoot himself in the foot. Because if he gets so much business from price buyers, he won't be able to keep up with demand. And that has killed many a business. Great cash flow, no net in the gross. And it's simple. This goes back to my point earlier about a £110,000 sales letter is not only easier to sell than 10 £1,000 sales letters, but it's easier for me to fulfill. Because I could do one, say I did one a month. That's what, 120 grand a year. That's not bad for a copywriter. Well, a month to write a sales letter is a long time. But now imagine I'm doing 120 sales letters a year at £1,000 each. Well, that's what, 2.5 a week? That's a lot of work. And the thing is, there's not substantially more work involved in a £10,000 sales letter than in a £1,000 one, because it is what it is, the length it needs to be. Yeah? But it is, it has to be. It makes no sense to give a lower quality sales letter for £1,000 because it's all about making money, So by charging low prices, not only do you shoot yourself in the foot by not making the money, you're doing a disservice to your clients. You can't give them the time and effort they deserve. All right? The next point is your products and services are perceived as low value, because if it's too cheap, it's not worth anything. There was a girl, I think she was in the inner circle for a while, not for long, who offered something very similar in her local area. So it wasn't like mine's all around the world. She was doing it in a local area, and it looked great on paper. The benefit she was offering, there's a membership area, there was a newsletter, there was help, templates. It looked pretty good, and she was quite good at what she did, but she was charging 20 quid a month for it. Well, 20 quid a month ain't worth anything, is it? If you paid £20 a month for something, would you value it? If I made these bold claims about Elite and charge you 50 quid a month, would you believe them? You probably wouldn't join. Now, the fact that it's £1,000 a month tells you that, okay, this is a serious thing. There are people paying that, they seem happy, they've been there coming up for 4 years. Yeah? So low prices, rightly or wrongly, imply a certain quality. And that's really important in service industries because it's hard to measure. And you can look at I don't know, you can look at these rings, these are silver, some of them are handmade. This one's handmade, it's about €300 or something. But the other ones, probably, I don't know, $60 because they're not handmade. You can't really look at them and see there's any difference particularly. But the price alone denotes or confers a certain quality on them. I like my rings anyway. So yeah, price says something rightly or wrongly about the perceived quality. You get, now this is a really important one, you get better compliance and consumption. Healthcare practitioners find this particularly, or say Phil. Okay, Phil charges what, £3 grand, £4 grand now? Something like that? For a 3-month package. Well, if you paid 50 quid for it a month, there's not much incentive to get in the gym and do the work because 50 quid was 50 quid. But if you've made that kind of investment, you want to get something back from it, mostly. So you're prepared to go in the gym.
Not from me, just mostly there.
I didn't say a word. Didn't even look at you. Just follow my eyes. But equally, going to see Dan Kennedy's putting down $18,000 on a day with Dan. Well, there's an incentive there for me to do something with the knowledge. I've not actually done much of it yet because of my mental health problems. But the framework's there. I talked about it with Vicky and stuff. And I've taken on board what he did, what he said. And I will do something with it. But if I paid 50 quid or 100 quid, there's no real incentive to. If you go to a chiropractor, well, I wouldn't go to a chiropractor because it's all fucking mumbo jumbo. But if you went to say a physio and you pay for 3 months up front, or a good one is Pilates. I'm going to do this. I'm not going into Pilates class because it's full of middle-aged old women who fart a lot, and I don't really want to be in a class of women. Hang on a minute. No, I don't want to do it as a class. So I should pay this lady €50 a shot 3 months in advance. Well, if I'm paying her, what would that be? 12 times, well, £1,500 or something. If I'm paying her that in advance, then there's an incentive for me to go along, because you don't get the money back. So I've made an investment in it. And having made an investment in it, I want my money's worth. So you're actually doing your clients a service by charging them more. If you believe, and if it's true, that what you sell helps them solve their problems. That's a really important point, and most people don't get it. You're not doing anyone any favours, especially yourself, by cutting prices. You can, because of that, you can spend more, the reverse of what I just said, is because you've got fewer clients and you're being charged more, you're charging them more money, you can give them more time and attention. You know, I write a £10,000 sales letter. If I do 12 a year, so I do 1 a month, I've got a whole month to research, write, edit, put it in a drawer for a couple of days, sleep on it. I'm not constantly scrabbling to, what do you say?
Crumpled if you sleep on it.
There's always one, isn't there? You can really give them the best service you possibly can. And they deserve it because they've paid you loads of money. So what happens when you cut prices? Because everybody does. Well, everybody does. That is what everybody wants. That is the knee-jerk reaction to any kind of objection on price. Or, as we saw with the Land Rover and the accountant and the hotel here, they give it. I don't even think it was to secure the sale, because I said I wanted a room. Not how much is a room, do I want one, but how much, just give me a room. So it goes even beyond wanting to secure the sale and keep the sale. I don't know why they do it. I don't understand it. They do it with Sarah all the time, and she buys loads of bookcases and stuff, because we've got loads of books, funnily enough. And she'll go in and, oh, you're a good customer, we'll knock €100 off. Well, why? It just doesn't make any sense. But they do it anyway. So cutting prices is, you might think you're doing people a favour, but you're not because of what I just said, but you're also doing yourself a real disservice, because looking at the numbers, £135 widgets, if you're making a profit of 35 quid. If you decrease your price by 10%, they're now £121.50, which is a reduction in your profit of 38.6%. Well, that's a fucking big cut from a seemingly small decrease in profits, in prices. Now, how many times have you walked down the high street and seen things like up to 70% off? I mean, okay, some of these things have probably got a big margin in there, but what the fuck do they think they're doing? What do they think they're playing at? Well, I'll tell you what it is. The reason is they're not selling anything because their marketing is shit. But the only thing they can think of is to cut prices. I went I was looking for a present for Sarah years ago. I took the kids into a shop, and I picked up this wooden Buddha. She's not religious, she just likes the symbolism. And I'd no sooner picked it up than this woman shouted across the room, "That's £50, but you can have it for 25." I just put it down again, because she immediately devalued the whole experience. I'm buying a birthday present for my wife and my kid's stepmom, and she's just said, oh, you can have it really cheap. I'm like, okay. It's like if you Google cheap escorts on Google, obviously, you'll see girls and escort agencies coming up, the cheapest escorts in London. I mean, I don't know about you, but that does not make my Mr. Harry fucking twitch. It actually makes me feel quite ill. Cheap escort. I mean, you can imagine what you're getting, can't you? Can you? Some festering vag walks through the door, you know. Don't look at me like that. But can you imagine it? Cheap escorts. I mean, oof. You may get a higher volume of business, but do you have the resources to handle it? Let's go back to what I was saying a minute ago. I don't know which website it was. I could be wrong here, so I won't mention it or name it because I'll probably get sued or something. But I think it's one of the big shoe sellers. They had this problem. They were selling stuff dead cheap and making no money because they had enormous volume, but they couldn't service it properly because everyone was too busy. Larry Steinmetz goes into this in some detail. He talks about, supply chain problems, service problems, helpline problems. And sometimes you don't want more business. I mean, Dan Kennedy told this story at Renegade Millionaire. And basically, Disney had a problem. They were too busy. So they deliberately raised prices and made it more difficult for people to come. So they deliberately reduced the number of visitors they had. And the banner headline was Disney visitors down by so many %. But they made more money. The newspapers didn't think to report the fact they'd made more money out of fewer people. But they deliberately discouraged people from going. Now that is renegade thinking. That is different, very different. Because most people wouldn't do that. But the maths works out. So you may get a high volume of business, but can you service it? The other problem is this. You're in a competitive business. Everyone else cuts their prices too. So garage down the road cuts its prices on tyres. You'll find inevitably if they're not educated in marketing and what we're talking about, all the competitors, all the competing garages will cut their prices as well. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 4. We've got at least 4 big supermarkets in Clonakilty. It's a small town as well. 4 big supermarkets and probably half a dozen smaller ones. And you know what they all compete on? Price. Best value shopping. Okay, Sarah will do that kind of thing, and she'll walk around with a calculator and stuff. And not because she needs to, but she enjoys the challenge. I suppose I get that. She does what she calls strategic shopping. Because Dunnes have got this thing, it's great actually, and this is quite cool. If you spend €50, you get a voucher for €10 off your next purchase of €50 or more. So if you keep it rolling on, you're getting €50 worth of stuff for €40. It's really quite cool. And she will, I mean, I just don't bother, I don't give a fuck. I don't need €10 that badly to demean myself at the checkout. But she will do it and she enjoys doing it. But all these big supermarkets, they all compete on price. That's the main thing. The thing is the price war, if say Super Value cut their chicken, the price of their chicken, well, Dunnes will then do the same. And because Dunnes is closer, I will go back to Dunnes. So imagine I was a price buyer and I'm buying cheap chicken. So I make the extra effort to go to the other side of town to go to Super Value. Well, then Dunnes bring their prices down, so I go back to Dunnes. So Dunnes is selling the same thing to the same person, but only for less. Well, this is what happens. If you cut prices, get into a price war, people tend to people don't like change. So they will tend to buy from the same place, but you're selling it more cheaply now. So everyone in a price war loses, including the consumer and the customer, because you're not getting the service and the attention that you deserve and require. Morale in the business will plummet because they're overworked, undervalued, and underpaid. And before you know it, you're just like North Korea. Just like North Korea. Nuclear weapons and everything. But it's true. You attract price buyers. Low prices attract low-priced people. You attract chavs, peasants, and commoners. And, it sounds very elite. I mean, I'd like to say I'm not an elitist bastard, but I'd be lying because I am. And now I will happily sit in the first class carriage in a train and crane my neck around and go, oh, look, poor people in the back. I think we should hermetically seal the doors and gas them, to be honest. But well, especially going up to Dublin on the train. I mean, you travel first class, Ed?
I use the train now.
You don't? All right. But you must have been on the train when all the pikeys get on at Limerick Junction. Fucking hell. It's awful. Entire families of overweight, crisp-eating fucking peasants. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I said it in an email recently. Hitler had some really good ideas. He just chose the wrong people. He should have gone for the commoners. But you attract those people by having low prices, and then you have to deal with them. Oof, rather you than me. You repel quality buyers for exactly the opposite reasons. You know, I wouldn't want to go to a Primark. I mean, have you been around a Primark before? Come on, be honest. Who's been to Primark? What kind of people do you get in Primark? Horrible ones. What kind of people do you get in Asda? Pretty much the same. I'm sure they've got this affirmative action thing in Asda, where they employ the most mentally damaged people they can possibly find. Because they're just zombies. I'm not making eye contact with Drew when he's eating that banana, I tell you. But you will repel people like me, because I don't want to go into Asda or Aldi. I won't go into Aldi. I'll be seen dead going, and they have got great cheese, so I send Sarah in to get it. I'm not going in there. I just refuse. But no, seriously, I would not want to go into Primark and those places because they're just full of horrible people. Crowded, fat, hot, sweaty, stinky people. And yeah, I know it's elitist. I know it is, and I know it's deeply, deeply politically incorrect. But it's true for me, and I think it's probably true for a lot more people as well. They just won't admit it. They have those filter things that I don't find myself encumbered with. This is why I fly first class on the airplane, or business class if I'm travelling with someone else who doesn't want to fly first class. Because you look back at the back of the cabin and you see row after row after row of vacuous bovine faces staring back at you. And you think, thank God I'm not with you lot. Hello, real food. It's true. Because you fly first or business? Business. There's not that much difference, actually. No. So you repel quality buyers because they don't want to be mixing with the chavs. There's another thing as well that Dan Kennedy talked about, which I'll probably come to in a moment. Those of you who were in Cleveland in March will remember, I think. You invite price-only comparisons. Think about this. If you're competing on price, that's what people will compare you on. That's obvious, but most people don't see it for what it is. Because you've immediately removed the value proposition, or you've reduced it to price only, which is why you get the price buyers. So any of the qualities you have in your work or your products disappears. It just gets lost in this, I described it as. I've described it as anything. You're attracting price buyers, they'll be to shop around on price. This is one of the beefs I have with Google AdWords and SEO as well. Whether or not that works is moot. Because I think over the last 10 years, the search process, if you like, has invited price comparison. Because people search and they shop around. Click on the first few ads, click on the first few natural the natural listings, and they'll compete on price. I even find myself doing it if I'm not careful. And I'm not a price buyer by any means. This is the big danger of Amazon for people. If you get into Amazon, onto their website as a retailer, or worse by far, eBay, you are quintessentially a price seller at that point, because the price comparison comes up and you get sucked into this. Well, it is often the same thing, but cheaper. And if you're going to get it cheaper, and it is the same thing, and you get the same level of service because it's Amazon, why not buy the cheapest? You don't want to spend money for the sake of it, do you? This is another reason I think online is is a dangerous way to go sometimes. You invite commoditisation. It's like a bit following on from above. You become replaceable by anyone who can deliver the same thing for the same price or a lower price. You're commoditised. There is no differentiating value at all in what you're selling or doing. And the thing is, it's a position we find ourselves ever more tightly squeezed into because of places like Amazon and eBay and other online retailers. Because if you think about it, on Amazon, say you go, using them as an example again, if you go onto Amazon as a retailer, you are forced into using a certain style of presentation. I would almost guarantee there's a certain kind of language you cannot use. You probably wouldn't get away with my kind of language. So everyone starts to look the same. This is the big danger of advertising online with Facebook and Google AdWords, and not LinkedIn at the moment, and all Bing at the moment, but they will go that way. They must needs go that way. Because of the problems they have with the FTC and things, they are very careful about what they will let you say. Because if you come across as a fraudulent seller, say you're making exaggerated claims about the health benefits of what you're selling, and you've advertised it with Google AdWords, or the FTC will not only come after you, but they go after Google as well. And guess who's got more money? Google. So Google, this is why they're not just arseholes for the sake of it, they're protecting themselves. So, especially my business, for instance, I am forced to use landing pages and use language which makes me look like every other fucking success peddler out there, because Google don't like my attitude and the way I am. Well, if we all look the same, we're all selling the same kind of products and the same kind of seminars and services, what's to choose from between us? Well, it will attract the lowest of the low. This is one of the problems that we have with business owners. This is one of the problems I see in these Facebook groups that people are running quite successfully. But if you look at the kind of people you've got in there, they're all these want-to-work-from-home wannabes. And they're all the same. Well, you can't sell people like that high-value, high-cost stuff, because one, they don't have the money, and two, they've been conditioned into this by this commoditisation of the market they're looking into to get things cheaply. This is why I'm not online very much. This is why I position myself the way I am. More about that tomorrow. Your levels of service deteriorate or decline, as does morale in your business. If you're running a business with employees, it's bad, to wit the firm up the road a few years ago. But even as a one-man band, when I was allowing myself to be knocked down on price, it was fucking miserable. And if you think about it, I hated my client and I was working for him. Well, that's almost like, it was by consent, but that's almost like being in an abusive relationship. And I was hanging around because I felt I needed the money. That was a big realisation when I realised I didn't, or I did, but I didn't need it from him. I just need it from someone, or someone's, some people. And Sarah, another story, Sarah was working at a place this was more than 10 years ago now, because we were over in the UK, and she was an occupational therapist working at a charity called Headway. And she had it fixed in her head. Well, we didn't need the money, because I was making a fair old screw with that firm, Aviva, and I was doing well in my copywriting. But because she was a professional woman, she wanted to feel she was contributing, so she had her own job. The woman was treating her like shit. The woman in charge of the place was an evangelical, born-again Christian. And that was bad enough. But she was also, and this was Sarah, it took a while for me to get this across to Sarah, how bad this was. But this woman was actually questioning Sarah's clinical judgment. It's like, this woman she was an admin person, she was a manager, she had no place even asking about Sarah's clinical judgment because she wasn't qualified. But she was fingers in every pie, holier than thou. And I said to Sarah, you can't do this job anymore. She says, why? I says, because we need the money. Well, we don't need the money, and two, it's destroying you. Because this woman is, you're lying awake worrying about this fucking woman at work. No amount of money is worth that. And that was another case of morale deteriorating because you got shitty clients. In this case, because she was employed, that was her client kind of thing. You can't afford the money to give people the service they deserve, and you're attracting the wrong kind of person. You and your staff will come to hate them, and by association, you'll start to hate your business. Who here has ever hated your business? Yeah, it's miserable, isn't it? Kin miserable. The value of what you offer becomes lost in that price war I mentioned. Because you and your competitors are all fighting the same fruitless battle with one identical weapon at your disposal. Nobody wins a price war. Not even the buyers. Probably especially the buyers.